The brown bull had been terrorizing the communal grazing lands of San Miguel for 3 weeks, charging at anyone who approached the water source that served both livestock and the village's agricultural needs. Local ranchers had tried everything: ropes, tranquilizers, even hiring professional cattle handlers from the city, but the massive animal's aggressive behavior made him too dangerous to capture safely. "That bull needs to be destroyed before someone gets killed," said Don Rafael Morales during the village council meeting in the community center. At 58, he'd been ranching in San Miguel his entire life and had never encountered an animal this unmanageable. The bull wasn't exactly wild. He bore a brand mark from the Hernandez Ranch 20 kilometers away. But 3 weeks of living untethered in the countryside had made him distrustful and aggressive toward humans. His brown coat was matted with dirt and burrs, his eyes showed constant wariness, and his behavior suggested an animal operating purely on survival instinct. "We contacted the Hernandez family," explained Maria Santos, the village administrator. "They said the bull escaped during transport to market 3 weeks ago. They're willing to pay for removal, but they don't want him back. Too dangerous to handle." The problem was simple but serious. The bull had claimed territory around the main water source that fed irrigation canals serving 30 farming families. Without access to that water during the dry season, crops would fail and livestock would suffer. But approaching the area meant risking a charge from an aggressive one-night 800-pound animal. "My son tried to get water yesterday," said Carmen Ruiz, a widow who farmed 3 hectares with her teenage children. "The bull charged him from 50 meters away. He barely made it to the fence in time." The village had hired 2 professional cattle handlers who'd spent a full day attempting to rope and restrain the bull. Both men had nearly been gored before retreating and recommending that the animal be shot as too dangerous to capture alive. "Killing him seems wrong," objected Father Miguel, the village priest. "But I understand the safety concerns. Perhaps we should vote on whether to... I can bring him water." The small voice came from the back of the community center. Everyone turned to see Mateo Cruz, a 10-year-old boy whose family lived in the poorest section of San Miguel. His father had died 2 years earlier, leaving his mother to support 4 children through seasonal agricultural work and whatever odd jobs Mateo could find after school. "Mateo, this isn't a game," Don Rafael said gently. "That bull is extremely dangerous. Professional handlers couldn't get near him." "I know. But I've been watching him every day from the hill. He's not mean. He's scared and thirsty. The water source is surrounded by open ground where he feels trapped. He charges because he thinks people are trying to corner him." The adults exchanged skeptical glances. A 10-year-old claiming to understand an aggressive bull's behavior seemed naive at best, dangerous at worst. "Mateo, even if you're right about why he's aggressive," Maria Santos said, "that doesn't make him safe to approach. You could be seriously hurt or killed." "But nobody else is trying to help him. They just want to shoot him." Mateo's voice carried a quiet determination that seemed older than his years. "He needs water. All animals need water. If I bring it to him where he feels safe instead of trying to force him to come to the water source, maybe he'll calm down." Don Rafael looked at Carmen Ruiz, Mateo's mother, who had gone pale at her son's proposal. "Carmen, you can't be considering this." "I'm not," Carmen said firmly. "Mateo, absolutely not. We've already lost your father. I won't risk losing you to a dangerous animal." But Father Miguel was studying Mateo with an expression of thoughtful consideration. "What exactly would your plan involve, Mateo?" "The bull stays near the old adobe ruins during the hot part of the day. There's shade there and he can see in all directions so he doesn't feel cornered. If I brought water buckets to that area and left them where he could reach them safely, he might drink. Once he's not so thirsty and scared, maybe he'd be calmer." "And if he charges you?" Don Rafael asked. "The ruins have walls I can get behind quickly. I'm small and fast. And I'd approach slowly from upwind so he smells me coming, making noise so I don't startle him. My grandfather taught me how to move around nervous cattle before he died." The village council members looked at each other uncertainly. The boy's plan showed more understanding of animal behavior than many adults possessed, but the risk was undeniable. "This needs to be discussed without children present," Maria Santos said diplomatically. "Mateo, please wait outside while we talk." After Mateo left, the debate intensified. Some council members thought the boy's idea was reckless and irresponsible. Others noted that professional solutions had failed. The bull needed to be dealt with before someone was hurt, and perhaps a different approach was worth considering. The real question, Father Miguel said quietly, is whether we're willing to let a child risk himself to save an animal that the rest of us have decided isn't worth saving. The silence that followed was uncomfortable, broken finally by Don Rafael. If we allow this, and I'm not saying we should, it would need to be done with safety precautions. Adults positioned to intervene if necessary, emergency medical support ready, strict protocols about distance and approach. We're actually considering this? Carmen Ruiz's voice was tight with fear. My son wants to approach a dangerous bull, and we're discussing protocols instead of saying no? Maria Santos looked around the room at faces reflecting the same difficult calculation. The risk of allowing a child to try something that had defeated adults versus the alternative of destroying an animal that might only need patience and understanding. The decision they made in the next few minutes would determine not just the bull's fate, but how San Miguel village would remember themselves, as people who let fear dictate every choice, or as a community willing to try compassion even when it required courage. Mateo Cruz carried 2 5-liter buckets of water along the dirt path leading to the adobe ruins, moving slowly in the early morning coolness. Behind him, at a distance of 50 meters, Don Rafael Morales and 2 other village men watched with binoculars and mobile phones ready to call for help. The village council had debated for 2 hours the previous evening before reaching a compromise. Mateo could attempt his approach, but with strict safety protocols. Adults would maintain visual contact at all times, a vehicle would be positioned for quick evacuation if needed, and Mateo would retreat immediately at any sign of aggressive behavior from the bull. Carmen Ruiz had agreed only after Father Miguel convinced her that denying Mateo this chance might create resentment that would drive him to attempt something even more dangerous without supervision. "Remember the signals," Don Rafael called out. "If you raise your right arm, we come get you immediately. If the bull charges, drop the buckets and run for the ruins." Mateo nodded without turning around, his attention focused on the area ahead where the brown bull typically rested during morning hours. He could see the animal now, lying in the shade of a crumbling adobe wall about 40 meters away. The bull's head lifted at Mateo's approach, ears forward in alert attention. Mateo set down the water buckets and sat on the ground, making himself appear smaller and less threatening. He'd learned from his grandfather that sudden movements and direct approaches triggered defensive responses in nervous cattle. Better to establish presence without immediately closing distance. The bull watched him, but didn't rise or show signs of aggressive behavior. After 5 minutes of sitting motionless, Mateo slowly stood and moved the water buckets 10 meters closer to the ruins, then retreated to his original position and sat down again. This pattern continued for 45 minutes. Advance with buckets, retreat, wait. Each time the bull tracked his movements with wary attention, but without charging or displaying the aggressive behavior that had driven off professional handlers. "He's not being stupid about this," observed Dr. Elena Martinez, the village's part-time doctor who had positioned herself with emergency medical supplies in case of injury. "The boy understands animal behavior better than those city handlers did." On Mateo's 6th approach, he placed the water buckets within 15 meters of where the bull rested, close enough that the animal could reach them without traveling across open ground where he might feel exposed. Then Mateo retreated 50 meters and sat down again, clearly signaling that he was leaving the water as an offering rather than trying to corner or capture the bull. The bull stood slowly, his massive brown body rising in sections as cattle do. For a long moment he simply stared at the water buckets, then at Mateo, his nostrils flaring as he tested the air for threats. Then, with deliberate steps that suggested extreme caution, the bull approached the first bucket. He sniffed the water carefully before lowering his head to drink. The desperate, continuous gulping made clear how thirsty the animal had been. "He's drinking," whispered Carmen Ruiz, who had insisted on being present despite her fear. Mateo was right. He just needed someone to bring water to him instead of forcing him to come to us. The bull drank both buckets empty, then stood for several minutes near the ruins, his body language noticeably more relaxed than it had been during the past 3 weeks. When Mateo slowly stood and began walking backward toward the observers, the bull watched but made no aggressive moves. That was successful. Don Rafael admitted as Mateo rejoined the group. But providing water once doesn't solve the larger problem. That bull still controls access to the communal water source. Maybe he won't be so aggressive now that he's not desperate, Mateo suggested. Can I try again this afternoon? The adults exchanged glances. The morning's experiment had worked better than anyone expected, but the fundamental situation remained unchanged. The bull was calmer but still dangerous, and the village still needed regular access to water that the animal was guarding. We'll try again this afternoon, Dr. Martinez decided. But Mateo, we need you to understand something. Even if the bull accepts water from you, that doesn't mean he's safe around other people. You're not trying to tame him, you're trying to keep him calm enough that we can figure out a permanent solution. That afternoon, Mateo repeated the water delivery process. The bull, now familiar with the routine, approached the buckets more quickly and with less obvious caution. After drinking, he remained near the ruins rather than retreating to defensive positions as he had previously. Over the following 3 days, the pattern continued. Mateo brought water twice daily. The bull's behavior became progressively less aggressive, and the village watched with a mixture of relief and uncertainty about what came next. The boy has established some kind of trust with that animal, Father Miguel observed on the 4th day. But we still need to address the water source access. Other people need to be able to approach that area safely. Dr. Martinez had been documenting the bull's behavioral changes with photographs and notes. I think we're seeing stress reduction rather than domestication. The bull was operating in survival mode, dehydrated, disoriented, defensive. Regular water and predictable human behavior have reduced his perception of threat. So what's the next step? Asked Maria Santos during an emergency council meeting. We need to test whether the bull's calmer behavior extends to other people, or if it's specific to Mateo, Don Rafael suggested. If the boy has created a unique relationship, that doesn't help us solve the communal water access problem. The following morning, Carmen Ruiz accompanied her son on the water delivery, staying 10 meters behind him as they approached the ruins. The bull watched both humans, but showed no aggressive response when Carmen helped place the water buckets and then retreated alongside Mateo. He accepted my presence, Carmen reported to the council. The question is whether that was because I was with Mateo, or because he's genuinely becoming less defensive toward humans in general. The village's approach to the dangerous bull was evolving from immediate elimination to careful observation and gradual trust building. But the larger questions remained. How long could they sustain this water delivery routine? What would happen when they needed to actually use the communal water source rather than just approaching its vicinity? And what permanent solution existed for a bull that was calmer but still fundamentally unpredictable? Mateo's courage and understanding had bought them time to seek answers, but time alone wouldn't solve the underlying problem of a powerful, semi-wild animal living in their communal space. The village council meeting room was more crowded than usual, with 20 farmers and their families gathered to discuss the bull situation. 2 weeks of Mateo's water deliveries had reduced the animal's aggressive behavior significantly, but the communal water source remained effectively off-limits to most villagers. We cannot sustain this indefinitely, argued Don Rafael. Mateo is missing school to deliver water twice daily, and we still cannot access the irrigation canals safely. The dry season is getting worse, and crops are beginning to suffer. Dr. Martinez presented her behavioral observations. The bull's stress indicators have decreased substantially. He is no longer showing the hypervigilance and defensive posturing that characterized his first 3 weeks here. However, his acceptance of humans remains limited primarily to Mateo and Carmen. What about bringing in animal control from the city? Suggested Pablo Herrera, who farmed 5 hectares of corn that desperately needed irrigation water. The nearest animal control office is in Oaxaca City, 3 hours away, Maria Santos replied. They quoted 8,000 pesos to send a team with tranquilizer equipment. The village emergency fund has less than 3,000 pesos available. The financial constraint made the situation more complex. San Miguel was a small agricultural community where most families lived month to month on farming income. 8,000 pesos represented a significant expense that would require contributions from families already struggling with reduced crop yields due to limited water access. There might be another approach, Father Miguel said quietly. Mateo has demonstrated that the bull responds to consistent, non-threatening behavior. What if we gradually expanded the number of people the bull becomes accustomed to, rather than trying to capture or remove him? How would that work? Asked Carmen, who had become protective of both her son's safety and the bull's well-being. Systematic desensitization, Dr. Martinez explained. We slowly increase the bull's exposure to different people under controlled conditions. Start with one additional person accompanying Mateo, then gradually expand the group. Over time, the bull learns that human presence does not automatically mean threat. That could take weeks, Pablo objected. Meanwhile, our irrigation schedule is falling behind, and we are losing productive farming days. The alternative is spending money we do not have, or destroying an animal that might not need to be destroyed, Father Miguel replied. Mateo has shown us that the bull is not inherently vicious. He was responding to perceived threats. Perhaps we owe it to the animal and to ourselves to try patience before resorting to more aggressive solutions. The council voted to attempt the gradual approach, with specific milestones and a 2-week deadline. If the bull did not become manageable enough to allow safe water access within 14 days, they would borrow funds to bring in professional animal control. The next morning, Mateo's approach to the water delivery site included his younger sister, 9-year-old Sofia. The bull watched both children carefully, but showed no aggressive response as they placed water buckets and retreated. He is getting used to seeing more than just me, Mateo reported to Dr. Martinez, who was documenting each interaction. But he is still nervous around adults. Over the following days, the group gradually expanded. Sofia became a regular presence, then Mateo's mother Carmen, then Don Rafael's teenage grandson Luis. Each new person required several days of repeated exposure before the bull's wariness decreased noticeably. By the end of the first week, 5 people could approach the water delivery area without triggering defensive behavior from the bull. But approaching water delivery was different from accessing the communal water source itself, which required working near the irrigation canal system in areas where the bull spent most of his time. We need to test whether he will allow people to actually use the water source, not just deliver water to him, Maria Santos said during a progress review. That is the real measure of whether this approach is working. The test came on day 10. Mateo, Carmen, and Luis approached the irrigation canal while the bull grazed 30 meters away. Moving slowly and speaking in calm voices, they filled containers with water, while the bull watched with evident suspicion but no aggressive action. He is tolerating our presence, Luis reported, but his body language shows he is not comfortable with it. His head stays up, ears forward, and he shifts position to keep us in view constantly. Dr. Martinez's assessment was cautiously optimistic. The bull has learned that this specific group of humans does not pose immediate threat, but we are a long way from him being comfortable with general village access to the water source. The 2-week deadline arrived with mixed results. A small group of villagers could now access the water source under specific conditions, moving slowly, speaking calmly, and maintaining predictable behavior patterns. But the majority of village residents still triggered defensive responses from the bull. We have made progress, Don Rafael acknowledged during the deadline meeting, but not enough. Half our community still cannot safely access water for irrigation, and tourist season is approaching when we need the grazing lands for additional income. The village faced a difficult decision. Continue the gradual trust-building process with uncertain timeline and outcomes, invest borrowed money in professional animal control services, or accept the permanent limitation on water access and adjust farming practices accordingly. There is one more option we have not discussed, said Carmen Ruiz, speaking publicly for the first time since the situation began. We could try to relocate the bull to somewhere he would be safer, and we would have better water access. How would we relocate an animal we can barely approach? Pablo asked skeptically. The same way we have been managing him, slowly, patiently, with Mateo's help. If we can lead him gradually to a trailer or containment area, we might be able to transport him to a sanctuary or farm willing to take a semi-wild bull. Dr. Martinez pulled out her phone. There is an animal sanctuary about 2 hours from here that specializes in farm animals with behavioral issues. They might consider taking him if we can arrange transport. The conversation shifted from whether to remove the bull to how removal might be accomplished humanely. Mateo listened quietly, understanding that his water deliveries had saved the bull from immediate destruction, but that the village's needs ultimately outweighed one animal's comfort. If we move him to a sanctuary, will he be safe there? Mateo asked Father Miguel after the meeting. Safer than here, the priest replied honestly. They have experience with difficult animals and space for a bull to live without threatening people's livelihoods. That evening, Mateo sat on the hill overlooking the grazing lands where the brown bull rested near the adobe ruins. 2 weeks of daily water deliveries had created a tentative connection between a scared animal and a determined child. But Mateo understood that connection alone could not solve complex community problems requiring practical solutions. Dr. Martinez ended her phone call with the animal sanctuary and turned to the assembled village council with cautiously optimistic news. Rancho Verde Sanctuary will accept the bull. They have experience with traumatized farm animals and adequate space for a semi-wild bull to live safely. But we need to arrange transport ourselves. How do we load an animal that barely tolerates human presence? Asked Pablo Herrera, voicing the concern everyone shared. Gradually, replied Carmen Ruiz, the same way Mateo has been working with him. Build trust day by day until the bull will follow voluntarily. Over the next week, Mateo modified his routine. Instead of just delivering water to the adobe ruins, he began placing buckets progressively closer to a makeshift pen that Don Rafael and several men had constructed from metal panels borrowed from neighboring ranches. Each day, the water moved 3 meters closer to the pen's entrance. The bull followed the water's movement, his trust in Mateo's routine overcoming his wariness of the unfamiliar structure. By day 5, he was drinking from buckets placed just inside the pen's entrance. By day 8, he entered the pen completely to access water positioned at its far end. He is comfortable entering the pen when the gate is open, Mateo reported to Dr. Martinez. But he will not stay if he sees people nearby. We need him to remain calm inside long enough to close the gate safely. The solution came from an unexpected source. Sophia, Mateo's 9-year-old sister, suggested leaving food inside the pen alongside water. If he is eating, he will stay longer. That gives us time to close the gate without scaring him. The plan was tested on day 10. Mateo placed water and a pile of fresh alfalfa inside the pen at dawn, then retreated with Sophia to their observation point. The bull entered cautiously, began eating, and remained focused on the food for nearly 20 minutes. During that time, Louis slowly approached from the opposite side and carefully swung the metal gate closed. The bull's head jerked up at the sound of the latch, but by then the gate was secured. He circled the pen nervously for several minutes, but did not charge the walls or display the aggressive behavior that had characterized his first weeks in San Miguel. Phase 1 complete, Don Rafael announced. Now we need to keep him calm until the transport arrives tomorrow morning. That afternoon and evening, Mateo and Sophia took turns sitting near the pen, speaking softly to the bull and ensuring he had adequate water and food. The animal gradually settled, though his wariness never completely disappeared. The transport truck arrived at dawn, a livestock trailer driven by Roberto Salazar, who had been moving cattle for 20 years and understood nervous animals. He surveyed the temporary pen and the brown bull inside with professional assessment. He is stressed but not panicking, Roberto observed. If we can load him smoothly, the 2-hour drive should not traumatize him further, but one wrong move and he could injure himself trying to break free. The loading process took 90 minutes of patient maneuvering. A ramp was positioned at the pen's gate, the trailer backed into place, and Mateo used the familiar water bucket routine to encourage the bull toward the trailer entrance. Step by cautious step, with the entire village watching silently from a safe distance, the brown bull followed Mateo's guidance into the trailer. When the trailer door finally closed, securing the bull for transport, Carmen Ruiz had tears in her eyes. 3 weeks ago, everyone wanted him dead. Now we are sending him somewhere he can live safely. Mateo stood beside the trailer, looking through the ventilation slats at the bull, who had taught him that patience and compassion could solve problems that force and fear could not. Will he be happy at the sanctuary? Happier than here, Dr. Martinez replied honestly. They have other cattle, open pastures, and people trained to work with difficult animals. He will have a life, which is more than he would have had if the village had made a different choice 3 weeks ago. As the transport truck pulled away, Carrying the brown bull toward Rancho Verde Sanctuary, the village of San Miguel stood together watching. What had begun as a crisis threatening their water supply had become something else entirely. A lesson in how communities respond to problems when a child insists there must be a better way than the easiest solution. The communal water source flowed freely again through irrigation canals that fed 30 farming families' crops. The tourist season had brought additional income to San Miguel, with visitors using the grazing lands that had been inaccessible during the bull crisis. Life had returned to normal rhythms, but something had shifted in how the village understood itself. Mateo Cruz returned to school full-time, his grades improving now that he no longer spent hours each day delivering water to a frightened bull. But his teacher, Señora Gonzalez, noticed changes beyond academic performance. The quiet 10-year-old who had rarely spoken in class now participated in discussions about problem-solving and animal behavior with unexpected confidence. Mateo has become a leader among his classmates, Señora Gonzalez told Carmen during a parent conference. When students face difficult situations, they ask him how he would approach the problem. He taught them that patience can accomplish what force cannot. The village council had documented the entire experience, creating a case study that attracted attention from agricultural extension programs across Oaxaca. Dr. Martinez presented their approach at a regional conference on human-animal conflict resolution, emphasizing how community cooperation and a child's compassion had solved a problem that professional handlers could not. We spent weeks trying to capture or eliminate the bull, Dr. Martinez told conference attendees. A 10-year-old boy suggested we try understanding him instead. That shift in perspective changed everything. Rancho Verde Sanctuary sent monthly updates about the brown bull's progress. The animal had integrated successfully with their herd, his aggressive behavior diminishing as he learned that humans at the sanctuary posed no threat. Mateo kept the updates in a folder, reading them whenever he needed, reminding that difficult problems sometimes had solutions nobody had considered yet. The village's approach to animal control situations changed permanently. When a pack of stray dogs began threatening livestock 6 weeks after the bull's departure, the council's first response was not elimination, but evaluation. Could the dogs be safely relocated? Were there underlying causes for their behavior that could be addressed? The bull taught us to ask different questions, Father Miguel explained during a community meeting. Not just how do we remove this problem, but why is this happening, and what solutions preserve life when possible? Carmen Ruiz had used her small portion of tourist season income to enroll Sofia in a veterinary education program for young students offered through the regional agricultural college. Her daughter's interest in animal behavior, sparked by watching her brother work with the bull, had grown into genuine passion for understanding how animals and humans could coexist. Mateo saved one bull, Sofia said during a school presentation about career aspirations. I want to learn how to help many animals and the people who live near them. Don Rafael, who had initially advocated for destroying the bull, became one of the village's strongest supporters of humane animal management. His practical ranching experience, combined with lessons learned from the bull crisis, made him an effective voice for balanced approaches that considered both human needs and animal welfare. I was wrong about that bull, Don Rafael admitted during a village celebration, marking successful crop harvests made possible by restored water access. But more importantly, I was wrong about how to solve the problem. Sometimes the wisest counsel comes from those we least expect to provide it. The brown bull's legacy extended beyond San Miguel's borders. 3 neighboring villages contacted Maria Santos, requesting information about their approach to the animal crisis. 2 agricultural organizations asked permission to use their case study in training materials for rural communities facing similar challenges. Mateo's classroom received letters from students in other villages asking about his experience. One letter from a 12-year-old girl whose village was dealing with crop damage from wild boars asked a simple question. How did you know the bull just needed help instead of punishment? Mateo thought carefully before writing his response. I did not know for certain, but my grandfather taught me that most animals respond to fear by defending themselves. The bull was scared and thirsty. Once we understood that, we could help him instead of fighting him. That evening, Mateo walked to the hill where he had spent hours observing the brown bull before attempting his first water delivery. The adobe ruins stood empty now, reclaimed by the village as a landmark commemorating the summer when a frightened animal and a determined child taught everyone that compassion and patience could solve problems that force and fear could not. The whole village had not cried, as dramatic retellings later suggested, but many had recognized something profound in watching a child's simple act of bringing water to a thirsty animal transform a crisis into an opportunity for growth, understanding, and a reminder that sometimes the bravest thing a community can do is choose patience over expedience.